Please note, views and opinions expressed in the course of this program do not represent that of WOTV. Therefore, this channel is not liable to any legal action that may result from this program.
Ẹ kú dédé àsìkò yìí, ẹ sì káàbọ̀ sórí ètò ọmọ Oòduà tó ń dé sójú ìwòran yín o láti iléeṣẹ́ ìkànnì WOTV. Òdu ni wá àwa kì í ṣàìmọ̀ fólókó. A tún ti dé o sórí ètò bá a ti ṣe máa ń dé. Tó ètò ọ̀hún ló wá balẹ̀ báyìí bí ọ̀wàrà òjò sójúde yín o. Àwa òmìnira bá ń wá pèrè fìdí abẹ́ bá ń fìdí tí a pèrè mọ́lẹ̀. Kájọ kan lágbá mi ètò tòní nítorí pé ń dá amú afúra wa lórí ètò lónìí ó gbọgbọ́n. Kódà ó gbẹ̀ngbẹ́ ẹ jẹ́ ń pè ní ó gbẹ̀ngbẹ́ nítorí pé kàyéfì ọ̀rọ̀ ni ọ̀rọ̀ kàbìtì la máa ń pè ní kàyéfì ọ̀rọ̀. Tó ẹ bá ń wá pèrè fìdí abẹ́ bá ń fìdí tí a pèrè mọ́lẹ̀ ká kọ́ lágbá mi ètò tọ̀hún ká máa bá kinní ọ̀hún bọ̀ bá a ti ṣe máa ń ṣe tá a máa ń kìbọnú ara wọn lẹ́lẹ́yọ̀ ẹ̀yọ̀ bó bá ti wá yá yín bó bá ti yégun ni o ṣe mọ̀ pé o ti yọrẹ́ àwa tá a wà ń bí náà àbá tèrè wá bí torí pé bàbá débi iṣẹ́ ṣíṣe náà là á ṣe ó ti wá yá ẹja jọ karabodò torí pé àní karabodò tán ká tún ṣe máa wá parọ́ pòtútù mú wá o ó ti yá bó bá ti yá yín ẹja jọ lọ.
Now, it is not my style to bring my persecution by the system to the public space. Never. I have dealt with the numerous challenges and attacks that I've experienced in my life from the system and operatives of the system without coming to the public to talk about them because I believe they are private to me, and as a citizen, quote and unquote, we will continue to test the boundaries of the law to find solutions to these problems and challenges. For 6 years, I was dragged through the courts. I was sentenced effectively to a term of life imprisonment unless I paid the sums of about, I think, 214 million naira. The EFCC was pressed into evil agency. For 6 years, I was taken through the court systems. It took the Court of Appeal to free me. You can look up the case, Dele Farotimi versus the Federal Republic of Nigeria. I never came to the public space to talk about it. I took it. I never once came to you to tell you what I was dealing with. 6 years. It took the Court of Appeal, Lagos Division, to free me in a 2-1 majority decision, something that should never ever have proceeded to any court. I suffered the betrayal of one of the gods of men in this town, left wounded, grievously wounded on the battlefield. I never once came to this place to talk about it, and I still would not. In 2021, a traditional ruler in this town sat at the head of a plot to murder me. I submitted petitions to the Commissioner of Police at the time, Akim Udumosu, and I did submit one to the State Security Services, Shangisha. Nothing came of it, in spite of the fact that names were given. Specific location was provided. Nothing came out of it. The only reason I spoke about it in public was so that you would all be aware if anything had happened to me at the time, and even now, of the persons who are involved or who are involved in that plot. The same people trying to kill me at the time sit today in the seat of the presidency. I never came to the public to talk to you about it, and my reasons are very simple. You don't do what I do without being prepared to die whenever death comes. And I died a long time ago. Nobody is about to start scaring me with death. Let's be clear about that. So, I never bothered coming to you to talk about it. I operated a waste management franchise in this town. I did not owe Loma a dime. I paid my franchise fees faithfully. It took Loma a single letter querying me to cancel my franchise. I never came to the public space to talk about it. I'm in court. On Monday, I received a summons from the police because a thin-skinned member of the Nigerian ruining class is offended by my words. I wasn't going to talk about that either. I was going to deal with it as I was already dealing with it. But yesterday, I got information that yet another principality is determined to use the powers of the Nigerian state and the Nigerian police, suborn their powers in pursuit of me. Let me be clear. If anybody should arrest me, let nobody beg for my freedom. Demand that they should take me to the court. Maybe they are the ones who are always saying go to court. I've always used the court as my instrument of battle. Even as much as I have continuously assailed that judiciary as an institution, it still remains the judiciary, and I will use it. But let nobody presume to plead with anybody on my behalf. I have lived my life up till this point, waiting for the consummation of this crystallization between myself and the system. I am here. I'm going nowhere. If anybody's going to run, now I go run. Not they run from honor. That is that. So, let's do this week's business. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Sunday service. And don't worry. Oh yeah, sorry, one more thing before I go. In as much as you guys have been faithlessly railing against Pastor Adeboye, the man actually told you guys the truth. If they hadn't been praying so hard, the evils of Bulaba and the multiple levels of evil that has overtaken us should have had the Naira well above 10,000 to 1. Where else in the world would you find the kind of concerted effort at the destruction of a country that has been visited upon Nigeria? Where else? So yeah, maybe the only reason you guys are pissed off with him, which is why I'm pissed off with him myself, is that instead of telling us about the efficacy of the prayers that have been said to avert the looming catastrophe over Nigeria, perhaps they should also talk about rulers being righteous, doing the right thing. That's what I'm going to say on the subject. So, let's talk about today. Buju Buu, a game of masquerades. Buju Buu. If you're a Yoruba person, you recognize the words. Buju Buu, Olorumbo, Shekin. You remember it, right? For those of you who are into Yoruba, Buju Buu is essentially the words we Yoruba use in the game of hide and seek. When we're busy playing hide and seek. Back in the days when there weren't, you didn't have internet, we used to have to wait for NTA to come online around 4:35 in the evening. And before then, if you switched on the TV, it was just going to be offering you horizontal lines and then some music as well, funny, Beethoven and all the rest of them. So back in those days, children were inventive and we were quite physical in the way we played. And one of the games we played was the hide and seek that every other child, everywhere in the world, everybody played it. But we had our own variants. Buju Buu, Olorumbo, Shekin. But what is Buju Buu and what is the relevance of Buju Buu? It is a game of pretense. We pretend to search for ourselves. You only had so much space within which you could have hidden yourself. But the person who is looking to catch the person who will now be the one who has to play the seeker. We all pretended that we didn't know where this or that person were. You added to the fun. But the Buju Buu I want to talk about today is more the Buju Buu of masks, the numerous masks that we all wear. You understand? The masks that we wear in all of our spaces. We are forced to pretend that things are normal. We are forced to pretend that we are normal. You know, back in the days when I had my dreads, or at least what became dreads, after I had fulfilled the condition that should have led me to shave off the locks at the time, I found that I began to enjoy the shock that I was seeing in the eyes of members of what is largely the Nigerian middling class and his upper class, at least the ones who have not become stratospherically rich. How do you pronounce that word? Stratospherically, whatever. They've not become so stupidly rich that they can't think anymore. At least we still run into them in airport lounges, in restaurants, in aircrafts. And I am blessed to be able to access the same level of comfort that a lot of them can enjoy within reason. So there I am looking like the madman in the midst of their normalcy. And I look at them giving me their shocked reactions, and I pitied them because I was deliberately, even up till now, pictures from back then still evokes that deliberate decision. I was deliberately showing them the madness of the society that they had built and the middling nature of their capacities, intellectual capacities. I needed them to see that even as they assailed the young men and women who elected not to enter the strictures that they had created and by which they wanted Nigerians to live, the stereotypical ignorance that would lead them to think that because a man had dreadlocks, he was therefore a criminal. The way the Nigerian police had normalized that profiling, I was deliberate about keeping my head that way because I wanted to be in their faces. So, masks. They were wearing the mask of normalcy, and I was deliberately wearing the mask of insanity. The insanity that they had normalized by their pretenses. So, we all wear masks. We're all pretending at one level or the other. Some wear masks and pretend to be good. Some wear masks, pretend to be indifferent. But there is a willful self-hypnosis that is required to keep up the charade by which we have defined our existence in our country. What is a charade? A charade is an absurd pretense intended to create a pleasant or respectable appearance. That's not my definition. That comes from Google, but I would explain it to you so that we would all get it. When things are really bad, evidently so, you're living in a house with leaky roofs. We can see the pails. We can see the different containers by which you're containing the leaky roof falling onto your torn carpets. We can see it. But there you are, sat in your regal majesty, drinking tea out of gilded cups, chariot. You pretend, absurd pretense. You know the thing about absurdity? Absurd pretense is when you, an impoverished country, not necessarily because we're poor, but we've been designed to be poor. You now have rulers, or maybe I should say ruiners, living in opulence in the midst of poverty. Chariot. Who are you fooling? Look, when you talk about chariots, you're talking about a farce, something that is fake. Let me show you a fake one. The governor of Zamfara, he was the first person with whom I saw the new BMW. But there are several Zamfara students made known to us thanks to Bello Garadanchi, who are living in squalor in Cyprus because the government sent them there and then refused to pay on their scholarship. But the same governor is able to buy the most opulent of cars, chariot, absurd chariots, absurd in the extreme. Zamfara does not have an airport, but I am told that the number of planes crisscrossing their airspace is scary, and we continue to pretend that everything is fine. Look, let's look at the extent of masks that we wear in Nigeria. What is a judiciary? A judiciary is an arm of government whose job it is to interpret the law. It runs the court systems. It comprises also not just of judges. The lawyers are just as much a part of that judiciary. And then our own judiciary. What capacities does it have? What kind of justice can be found therein? One of the most heartbreaking things for me as a lawyer is the knowledge, and I'm speaking to knowledge, I'm not talking about suppositions. It is the knowledge that it is almost impossible to find substantial justice in our courts. If you don't believe me, let me remind you. Children, I don't know how many of them now, because it gets baffling and even more confusing when you begin to look at the pictures that came after they were released. But we were told minors, and we saw several pictures and videos of minors in the court. These persons were sent to prison by a judge. They were awaiting trial for 93 days, I believe, in a country with a judicial system. When they were granted bail, in the sum of 10 million naira. It was two shorties, underage children. The judge could see that, and that was justice to him. And then the president, through the attorney general, jumped on it, and by executive fiat, trial was stopped. They were freed, and all of a sudden we're having parties to celebrate that the government and the judicial system abdicated their responsibilities to those who thought themselves to be citizens. Where were the mullahs in the north? All the voices that claims to represent Arewa, where were they? Silent. But if it was somebody supposedly blaspheming, they all begin to have add-ons. And we have a judiciary. That same judiciary asked mascot the slapper to raise 500,000 naira bail. A legislator, 500,000. Underage children, 10 million naira. And we have a judiciary. Masks, chariots. They are outliers, yeah. There are good men out there, even within the judiciary, I agree. But what's the ratio? We have to assess an institution, not persons. The speed with which rich men and politicians, the speed of justice or injustice that they are able to assess compared to the poor. Exactly where lies the hope of the common man? All right, so we have legislators. What's the legislative arm intended to do? In every society, they're the ones empowered to make laws. But the laws are meant for the good of the people. The good of the people. Those are the ones that are meant to make laws for the good of the people. Appropriate money for the good of the people. But what good have they done? It took them less than 48 hours or thereabout to change the national anthem. But what else have they ever done with speed in the interest of the people? And we have a legislative arm of government. It holds nobody responsible for anything. It is more focused on constituency projects. They were offering mics. And we have a legislative arm. And let me tell you, this has very little to do with party affiliation, with ethnicity, with religion. They are one and the same in that house. The only time you ever hear any argument of any substance is when they are quarreling over loot. At every other time, they are less bothered about the plight of the Nigerian. And yes, we have legislators. Do you know who I am? Look at these rats. I can make you disappear. I'll lock you in my generator house. Those are your legislators. And please, don't get me started already. The person in question, I've alluded to it somewhere else. This person came to the National Assembly on the back of APGA. He had the picture of Ikemba adorning his poster. He must be one of those who will speak to the marginalization of Ndi Igbo. Grievance politics has meant that a whole suite of people have worn masks, pretending to be the ones who are protecting the interest of the people. That one did not bother to ask the ethnic affiliation of the person he was happy slapping. I'm not sure it would have mattered much to him. And we have legislators. Masks. Masks. That's what we're all wearing. Masks. We pretend in a game of charade. That's what we are wearing. Do I talk about the executives? The only thing that is true of them is probably the last of the syllables. Thieves. That's what we have essentially enthroned in office across the length and breadth of Nigeria, from governor's office to local government chairmen to heads of parastatals, MDGs. Thieves. Everywhere you look, thieves. Actual thieves, convicted thieves, criminals of all sorts, running our enterprise. If Nigeria were to be an enterprise, it's being run by crooks. That is not me abusing anyone, just simply saying what is. You want us to talk about the clergies? We should talk about the clergies. problem is there is nothing to talk about. There is nothing to talk about. The only time you hear the voice of Nigerian pastors and imams is when they either they are preaching hatred or they are preaching prosperity. That is the only time you hear about them, whether they are Muslims or Christian. Okay, so if you want to break it down, let's put it this way. The Christian ones are intent on preaching ignorance. They don't seek to liberate the people with the word. They seek to enslave. The Muslim ones are little different. They hold nobody to account. The only difference is that they are not as loquacious as the Christians, at least in the South. But look all over our country today. If God is indeed the God of truth, how come our country has been overtaken by lies, by deceit, by fakery, by charade? All right. So you were praying so that so that naira will not fall to 10,000 to 1. Praise the Lord. The Lord hears prayers and his name shall not be mocked. Pastor Adeboye is completely correct. If they hadn't been praying, if God had not been merciful, this country should have collapsed. I spoke with friends within the system and they were telling me how almost impossible it was to pay salaries within the federal government at some point last year. So yes, Nigeria should have collapsed. And yes, everything has been done to destroy the currency. Emefiele substantially destroyed the naira under the watch of Abacha and of Buhari. The APC, almost everybody who is in government today was part and parcel of that destruction. What has the clergy ever said about that beyond praying about it? It's not enough to pray. Did prayer build the redeemed camp? Yes, but you worked. Angels didn't come down to build any part of that beautiful city that you have built out of a jungle. Where is the place of works? Where is the place of righteousness exalting a country? How many words have been spoken in rebuke of the evil that has overtaken our country, either by Muslim clerics or by Christian clerics? How many? Just how many? The other day, thanks again to Bello, we got to know that those they considered senior clerics were given a certain sum, lower clerics were given a certain sum because they went to Aso Rock to go and see Bulaba. Listen, of exactly what use is the clergy in a country that is apparently overtaken by so much evil? Look, today, a bank executive confessed to me that this shortage of naira, the scarcity of naira that we are seeing, is not contrived. It's simply scarce, it's not available. How is that possible? Even if you say you are transiting to electronic banking, it's not the same as saying that there simply isn't any cash available within the banking industry if you are not deliberately and willfully attacking and seeking to destroy your own currency. Who does the kind of things that have been done in Nigeria if the government is not deliberate about wanting to destroy the economic base of a country? Whilst we are busy praying against the devaluation, have you said anything about this? It's not. Let's talk about the citizens. Now, here's the thing. We're playing a game of charade. It's a game of pretense. We've already confirmed that our judiciary is not behaving the way a judiciary should behave. Confirmed. We've also agreed that the legislators are more or less looters. The executives are actually thieves. The clergy largely complicit. We, the citizens, quote and unquote, who are actually the victims, playing to be citizens. You get it? You, me, we are victims. We pretend because we are told that we are citizens. Some of us are aware, and because we are aware, I am very, very much aware of my victimhood. Because I cannot be anything but a victim in a country where the judiciary is as hopelessly compromised as our own is, where the legislators are essentially looters, where the executives, and when I say executive, stop thinking only about your governor. Part of the executive is your police. Part of the executive is your custom. Each and every one of the civil servants you are looking at are part and parcel of the executive. It's not just about Tinubu and your governors. It's about the chairman of that parastatal. It's about the MD of that water corporation. It's about each and every one of you who sit in government offices. That is the executive. So we, the victims, who believe ourselves to be citizens, what kind of masks are we wearing? Exactly what kind of mask are we wearing? Don't forget, it is these same victims, quote and unquote, citizens, who peoples the judiciary. They are the ones you find in the legislator, in the legislative houses. They are the ones you find executives. So we are all to blame. We are all wearing masks, pretending to be good people. But we are all wearing masks. Let's look at what you pass for the middle class. You wear masks, middling class. In that your class, you're largely poor, rich men. Only one illness away from poverty. One job loss away from penury. With the gross devaluation of the naira, a lot of you are already selling your substance to educate your children abroad because the Nigerian educational system has been destroyed. Some of it thanks to you. And now everybody is paying the price. But that middling class has a chronic inability to identify what is in his own selfish interest, even when he's unenlightened. That inability to identify exactly what is in their own enlightened selfish interest is what has destroyed Nigeria, not just the ruining class. The middle class is intended as the engine room for the production of original thoughts, ideas, leadership within a society. It is the class that is closest to the underclass, to the lower middle class. But the Nigerian middling class is more intent on joining the ruining class than on focusing on visioning. And because of the complicity of that middle class, and those are largely the professional classes, lawyers, doctors, engineers, civil servants, top civil servants, bankers, insurers, it has taken the complicity of that middling class to destroy the fabric of this society. And we're all wearing masks. Some wear the masks of victims, but they are actually part and parcel of the destruction. Some wear the masks and they climb into the ruining class and they become just as oppressive and wicked as everything they once criticized. Each and every one of us bears burdens of guilt in different ways and to different degrees, but we are all to blame. None of us, none, including myself, none of us is free of guilt. The degrees might differ, and we definitely ought to, as a collective, look to do something to redeem our country. If not for us, for our children, for the future. The underclass, let's talk about those ones. These days I try my best to do one or two things in Yoruba language of my birth, and the language by which I can communicate with the mass of the people within my space. For those of you who are hearing me, if you're hearing me, you are not really a member of the underclass. You are a member of the middle class, or perhaps one of the monitoring spirits from the upper classes, The reality of the matter is that there is an existential crisis facing Nigeria, and you need to be talking to the underclass. Because let me tell you something. If the Nigerian revolution, hear me again, maybe I should use the word, if the Nigerian implosion or the outbreak of chaos should come initiated by the underclass, you, the middling class, will be the first target. Those who benefit from the ruination of Nigeria would largely escape, and they will probably be the ones who will come and redesign a country to their own benefit. You have ignored the underclass. I wrote a piece some years ago. You'll be well advised. Visit my website. Go and look for it. I think you will recognize. That's the title. I spoke specifically to the issue of the disconnect between the middling class and the underclass, to the point where when even they talk about the revolution, they do not realize that the underclass that they have ignored to educate, who will be the soldiers in the hands of whoever controls the street in that time, would see them as the first line of enmity. They ignore this all of the time. They ignore that they have not educated these people, and for these people, you who look like you are hitting, you have extra, you are the first target for them. So keep wearing your masks of victimhood. The real victims knows who the victims are, and you are not a victim in their eye. You are a perpetrator. You are one of those who have put them where they are, and when the time comes, they will come for you. Let that sink in. Get it clear. When the time comes, they will come for you, not necessarily because you took a part. It's your silence in the face of evil that have rendered you complicit. You know, Yorubas have a proverb. It says, "Ẹni tẹ́gùn lé kókó ìrọ́jú, bó ṣe ń rẹ ará ayé, bẹ́ẹ̀ náà ló ń rẹ èrò ọ̀run." Those pursued by the mask, the masquerade, the ancestral mask, should persevere. Take heart. The man behind the mask tires just as much as the person he pursues. But that proverb only speaks in relation of those who are prepared to do something about their situation. If you are being chased by egunguns, masks, who have the capacity to run in relays, let me show you. Buhari assailed you for 8 years. That he has left has not meant a change in your fortune. If anything, things have worsened significantly. I warned you it would, remember. Talked about the twin horsemen of the apocalypse. Maybe I speak too much Dogon Turenchi sometimes, so you guys find it difficult to understand me. But if you go and check the word apocalypse, you would understand that we are not even close to where Bulaba is capable of taking Nigeria to. So when Adeboye told you that their prayers worked, he wasn't lying. He just didn't balance it by saying the things he ought to have said and doing the things he ought to have done beyond praying. Walk and pray, said the Bible. So let's be clear. If you keep running, the egungun runs in relays. The only thing that is predictable about Nigeria and its succession races is that they come in waves of mediocrity. If you look back to the experiment that we are calling democracy in Nigeria today, Obasanjo started it, so let's say he was the first of the mask. He ran 8 years. He gave it to the next mask. You kept running. But of course, you're tiring. Because with each step, they're draining you. They're like African wild dogs. They're running relays and you kept running. But as you're running, you're tiring. They are tiring too, but they have the capacity to run in relays. So Obasanjo left, Yar'Adua came, Jonathan came, Buju Buu came, and now you have Bulaba. The only thing that is consistent in that chain is that things have grown progressively worse with each one of them that have come. So here is the thing. You will tire because you're not fighting persons. You're running against a system. So if the person being chased by the mask does not do something beyond run, he will tire, the mask will overtake him, and he will be killed or ruined the way we've been ruined over the time. So it is not enough to preach perseverance to you. This is the part where I remind you again, there are ongoing consultations. I am of the opinion, firm opinion, that we should commence a sit at home on the 3rd of December, if the legislative arm before whom a bill will be presented to amend the Electoral Act fails to do so. There are ongoing consultations. I'm sure that by this time next week, I'll be in a position to tell you, if God preserve our lives, I don't take it for granted I'll be alive, but if God preserves us beyond that date, I'll let you know exactly where we are, even if it might happen before. But suffice to say that I recognize the need to synergize. I know that I can't do anything on my own. It takes you, all of us, to sit down together, have clear understanding as to exactly what we want to do to reverse the trend of evil that has overtaken us. But surely, you must all have come to the understanding by now that if the person being chased by the mask, there is a spiritual allegory in that. In Yoruba mythology, the mask is the spirit of the departed ancestors. We're being ruled by ancestors. They keep changing the person in the mask. If we don't break the mold, remove the mask, and redefine our cause, our children will inherit what has overtaken us. I just came by today, as every other day, to help us understand that it is in our hands. Just as we have had to consent to our collective enslavement by the embrace of hatred, it is also in our hands to ensure that this does not move on to the next generation. Yoruba says, "Àbọ̀rọ̀ là ń sọ fọ́mọlúàbí, tó bá dénú ẹ̀, á dòdìdì." Half a word for the wise, more than good enough. I could preach you the Bible. It will make no difference to the fool. I've said my own. Those who will hear, will hear. But before I go, let me wrap up by repeating what I said before I commence the lecture. If any one of the idiots, and I use that word deliberately, if any one of the idiots who think they are gunning for me end up doing their worst, please, I beg you, don't beg for my release. Just demand that they should take me to their court. Thank you. God bless you all. Have you a blessed week ahead of you, everybody. And don't worry, I'll keep learning how to do this thing. Today seems a little funny with all the snaffles at the beginning. Bye-bye, everyone. Enjoy your week. God bless.
Ẹ kú àtàárọ̀ o. Ẹ dẹ̀ kú bí ètò ọ̀hún bó ṣe lọ. Ó dẹ̀ dá mi lójú pé ẹ ti rí ọ̀kan àbí méjì ń tẹ́ ẹ fẹ́ gbọ́ àbí tẹ́ ẹ fẹ́ rí, ẹ ti rí gbogbo ẹ̀ nínú ètò tòní. Tó ó kù tọjọ́ mi, àmọ́ kí n tó lọ jẹ́ máa rán yín létí pé ètò tẹ́ ń wò ẹ máa bá mi like, ẹ máa share o, kẹ́ ẹ dẹ̀ máa bá mi wá subscription, more subscription, nítorí pé Wo TV ń gòkè àgbà. Ìrànlọ́wọ́ yín ni àti ìrànlọ́wọ́ Ọlọ́run Ọba. Títí wá dìgbà míì táwùjọ máa fojú níjú lórí ìkànnì pẹ̀lú àkọ́tún ètò míì tó tún gbọ́ngbọ́n. Àdìgún lòdò dọ́ra wọ ni mò ń jẹ́ o, ẹ ti mọ̀ mí lánàá kó tó dé ní, ẹ má jẹ́ n porí kíkun, àmọ́ títí dìgbà míì ńkọ́, ẹ kú àtàárọ̀, ẹ kú iṣẹ́ ìní, ṣé kò rẹra jù?